A single word spoken in the dark can create an obsidian echo that follows you for the rest of your life. We explore the haunting power of memory and the secrets that refuse to stay hidden in the shadows of the past. Subscribe now and listen to the echoes of the soul. I wasn't supposed to stop in Millbrook that evening. The drive from Columbus had been long, and my knee was acting up the way it always does in November, and every logical part of my brain said to keep going, get home to Cincinnati, eat something real, sleep in my own bed. But I'd just passed the exit for my son's neighborhood when my gas light came on, and the next station on the highway was 11 miles out, so I took the ramp without really deciding to. It was a Tuesday. Nothing special about it. Just a man with a low fuel tank making a practical choice. That's the only reason I was in Millbrook at 7, 40 inches the evening instead of halfway home. That's the only reason any of this happened the way it did. I figured I'd fill up the tank and maybe text my son Connor to let him know I was nearby. We hadn't seen each other since Labor Day, which already felt like too long. My granddaughter Lily had her 12th birthday coming up in 3 weeks, and I hadn't mailed her gift yet. A set of watercolor paints she'd asked for back in September. I had them in a bag in my back seat. On impulse, I decided to drop them off in person, spare myself the shipping, see her face when she opened them, maybe stay for coffee. Simple enough plan. I called Connor as I pulled out of the gas station. He picked up on the third ring. Hey Dad, what's up? I'm about 8 minutes away. Just passed through on my way back from Columbus. Thought I'd drop off Lily's birthday present early, if that's okay. There was a pause. Just a half second too long. Oh, yeah, sure, come on over. He didn't sound surprised exactly. More like he was recalculating something. I didn't think much of it at the time. The house was a colonial on a quiet cul-de-sac. Brick front, 2-car garage. The kind of house that looked like a Christmas card from the outside. My daughter-in-law, Nicole's SUV, was in the driveway next to Connor's sedan. Lights were on in the living room. I could hear the TV through the front door before I even knocked. Some kind of action movie, bass rumbling through the wall. Connor opened the door looking tired in the way he always looked tired now, like something was perpetually draining him just below the surface. He was 42, but he'd started looking 50. He managed to smile and stepped back to let me in. The living room was full. Nicole was on the couch with her son Jake, who was 14, and built like a linebacker and barely looked up when I came in. Her daughter Emma, who was 10, was on the floor with a tablet, earbuds in. The movie was loud. Popcorn on the coffee table. Everything cozy and warm and normal. Hey, Walter, Nicole said, not getting up. She had the particular kind of smile she always gave me, the one that reached her mouth but stopped before her eyes. Didn't know you were coming. Spontaneous visit, I said. Where's Lily? Another pause. This one I felt in my chest before I understood why. She's in her room, Connor said, a little too quickly. I asked if I could go say hello and bring her the present. And Connor said, sure, go ahead. And something in the way he said it made me look at him for just a moment longer than necessary. He was looking at the floor. I walked down the hallway past the main bathroom, past Jake's room with the gaming posters, past Emma's room with the purple door and the little wooden sign that said Emma's Space. Then I reached the end of the hall where the door to the converted utility room was. It used to be a small laundry room before they got the stackable unit put in the master closet 2 years ago. Nicole had called it Lily's cozy room in a Christmas card she'd sent. I hadn't thought much about it then. I knocked. No answer. Knocked again. Come in. The room was small. That was the first thing. Not small like a modest bedroom. Small like a space that had never been designed for a person to live in. The window was high on the wall, the kind of narrow, horizontal window you see in basements. The light fixture overhead was a single bare bulb on a pull chain. There was a twin mattress on the floor. No frame, pushed against the wall under the window. A plastic dresser. A small desk that was really just a folding table. Lily's backpack hung on the back of the door because there was no closet. The carpet was old and a color that might have once been beige. My granddaughter was sitting on the edge of the mattress eating a bowl of cereal. She was 12 years old and small for her age, and she had her mother's dark eyes. Her mother, my son's first wife, had been killed in a car accident 22 months ago. Lily had been in the car, She'd walked away physically intact, which everyone said was a miracle, and which I suspected Lily had never once thought of as miraculous. She looked up when I came in, and I saw something pass through her face that broke something in me before I fully understood what I was seeing. It was relief. The particular relief of a child who has been alone for a long time and is suddenly not. Grandpa. She set the cereal bowl on the floor and stood up. I hugged her and held on maybe a second longer than she expected. She was thin in a way she hadn't been at Labor Day. Her hair needed a trim. When I stepped back, I looked at her properly, the way I should have been looking the moment I walked in. "You eating dinner in here, sweetheart?" She glanced at the cereal bowl. "I already ate. This is just a snack." "What did you have for dinner?" She hesitated. "A sandwich." "Where?" She pointed at the folding table. There was a plate with a few crumbs on it pushed to the side. "You didn't eat with everyone else?" The way she looked at me then, not surprised, not embarrassed, just careful, like she was trying to figure out how much I already knew and whether it was safe to tell me the rest. "It's easier this way," she said. "Nicole says it helps with the flow of dinner. I take a long time to eat sometimes, and it slows everyone down." I sat down in the folding chair at her desk because my legs needed it. "How long has this been the arrangement?" She looked at the floor. "Since the summer. Around July. That was 5 months ago. 5 months of my granddaughter eating alone in a converted laundry room while the rest of the family sat at the dinner table 40 feet away. Lily." I kept my voice even. "Look at me." She looked up and I could see she'd been crying earlier. Maybe not tonight, but recently enough that the redness around her eyes hadn't fully faded. "Can I ask you something?" She nodded. "Are you happy here?" The pause before she answered was the longest 5 seconds of my life. "I try not to bother anyone," she said finally. "I know it's hard. Nicole has Jake and Emma, and they have their routines, and I'm different, and I don't always fit, and I try really hard to stay out of the way. I eat in here, and I do my homework in here, and I don't use the living room when they're watching their shows." She stopped and took a breath. "I just sometimes wonder." She stopped again. "Wonder what?" When she looked at me, her eyes were filling up and she was fighting it. I could see her fighting it, this 12-year-old girl who had already lost too much and was trying so hard not to need anything from anyone. "Do I make people uncomfortable, Grandpa? Is that why nobody wants to eat with me? Because I remind them of something sad? Because of Mom?" I had spent 38 years as a high school principal. I had sat across from grieving parents, expelled students, teachers on the edge of breakdowns. I knew how to hold myself together in difficult moments. I had made a professional life out of it. I did not hold together. I pulled Lily into a hug and she started crying for real this time, the kind of crying that comes from somewhere deep and has been waiting a long time for permission. I held her and didn't say anything for a while, because nothing I could say in that moment would have been adequate. When she settled, I leaned back and held her face in both hands the way I used to do when she was small. "You do not make people uncomfortable. You are not sad. You are not a reminder of anything except how wonderful your mother was. Because you are so much like her, it takes my breath away sometimes." I made sure she was looking at me. "And you deserve to sit at the dinner table with your family. You deserve to eat hot food in a warm room with people who love you. You deserve that, Lily. Not because I'm saying so. Because you're a child, and that's the minimum a child is owed." She wiped her face. "Dad says it's temporary, while everyone adjusts. 5 months is not temporary." She didn't say anything, but something in her face shifted, like a door that had been stuck for a long time had just come slightly loose. "Pack a bag," I told her. Her eyes went wide. "What?" "You're coming home with me tonight." "But Dad?" "Let me talk to your dad. You pack what you need for a few days, and let me handle the rest." I stood up and walked back down the hallway to the living room, and I'm not sure what was on my face, but Connor looked up from the couch, and whatever he saw made him stand immediately. "Dad, what's—" "She's been eating alone in that room since July." I kept my voice low and level. I was very aware of Nicole on the couch behind me. 5 months, Connor. Your daughter has been eating by herself at a folding table in a storage room for 5 months. Connor's face went through several things at once. Guilt, defensiveness, something that looked, for just a moment, like relief that someone had finally said it out loud. "It's not like that," he started. "Then explain to me what it is like. Because from where I'm standing, it looks exactly like what it is." Nicole stood up. She was good at composure. I'll give her that. Her voice was perfectly reasonable when she spoke. "Walter, I understand you're concerned, but Lily actually prefers eating in her room. She said so. She gets overwhelmed at the table with all the noise and the conversation. It's an anxiety thing. Her therapist actually suggested—" "Lily doesn't have a therapist," I said. "She had one for 3 months after her mother died, and Connor stopped taking her in March because of the schedule. I know because I asked her specifically at Easter." The composure flickered, just briefly. "Connor." I turned to my son. "You're going to look me in the eye and tell me this is okay. That your daughter eating alone in a laundry room every night is okay." He couldn't do it. He looked somewhere to the left of my face and said, "It's complicated, Dad. Lily has a hard time with the blended family dynamic. Nicole's kids have their routines, and she asked me tonight if she makes people uncomfortable. She asked me if that's why nobody wants to eat with her." I watched his face. "She asked me if it's because she reminds everyone of her mother." The sound Connor made was not quite a word, more like something collapsing quietly. "She's 12 years old, Connor. Her mother has been dead less than 2 years. And instead of sitting at a dinner table with her father, she's eating cereal alone at a folding table under a bare light bulb." I said, "It's complicated. I'm taking her home with me tonight. You can't just—" "I can, and I am. You can call your lawyer if you want. But your daughter is not spending another night feeling like a guest in her own home." Nicole's voice had lost its reasonableness by then. "This is completely out of line, Walter. You come in here, unannounced, and you want to blow up our entire family structure based on one conversation with a child who has a history of being dramatic." "She's not dramatic. She's grieving. And she's been failed." I looked at Nicole directly. "I don't know what you told yourself to make this okay. I don't know how you looked at that room, at that setup, and decided it was acceptable. But I'm not going to spend energy trying to understand it tonight. Tonight, I'm getting my granddaughter." I went back to Lily's room. She had her backpack on, and a duffel bag on the mattress, half-packed, watching the door like she expected someone to come in and tell her to stop. "You ready?" She looked at me with those dark eyes. "Are you sure?" "Completely." We were at the front door when Connor caught up to us. He looked undone in a way I hadn't seen since the days right after his wife died. "Dad, let's talk about this. Tomorrow, let's all sit down. Tomorrow you can come to my house and we'll talk. All 3 of us." I opened the front door. "But she's coming with me tonight." From the couch, Nicole said something about lawyers and grandparent rights and interference, and I turned around one last time. "I've been a mandatory reporter for almost 4 decades, I said. "I know what neglect looks like. I know what isolation looks like. And I know who to call." The drive to Cincinnati was 90 minutes. Lily sat in the passenger seat and looked out the window and didn't say much for the first half hour. I didn't push. I turned the heat up because she'd been cold. I could see it in the way she was holding herself, and I found a radio station playing old Motown, because her mother had loved Motown, and I thought it might feel like company. Around the halfway point, she said, "Is Dad going to be mad?" "Probably a little. Are you?" "Not at you. Not even close." "At Dad?" I considered how to answer that. "I'm worried about your dad. I think he got lost somewhere along the way, and I'm hoping this helps him find his way back." She was quiet for a bit. Then, "Nicole told him I preferred eating alone. She said the therapist recommended it. Dad believed her." "I know. He wants to believe her. It's easier." She said it without bitterness, which was almost harder to hear than if she'd said it with bitterness. Just a flat, clear-eyed observation from a 12-year-old who had been figuring out adult dynamics alone in a small room for 5 months. He loves her, and if he admits what's happening, he has to do something about it, and that's hard. So he decides not to see it. I didn't say anything because she'd said it more clearly than I could have. "Mom would have seen it," Lily said softly. "She always saw everything." "She really did," I agreed. We didn't talk much after that, but it was a comfortable quiet. The kind that happens between people who trust each other. My house is a 3-bedroom ranch on a street full of old maples that have been dropping leaves in my gutters for 26 years. My wife Ruth died 4 years ago, and since then I've rattled around in it alone, keeping her garden alive because I don't know how not to, and because it gives me somewhere to put my hands on difficult mornings. Lily's room, the one she'd stayed in as a little girl when her parents needed a weekend, still had the quilt Ruth had made, pink and yellow squares. Lily had loved that quilt. When I opened the door to the room and she saw the quilt, she put her hand over her mouth. "It's still here," she said. "Of course it is." She turned around and hugged me hard, and I stood in the doorway and held my granddaughter and thought about everything I had not seen, and everything I needed to do now. She showered, which took a long time and which was fine. I made her grilled cheese because it was the first thing I could think of that would be warm and simple and real. When she came out in pajamas, hair damp, she sat at my kitchen table and ate the whole sandwich and most of a bowl of tomato soup and a glass of apple juice. And she ate like someone who had been careful about appetite for a long time and had suddenly decided to stop being careful. "When did you last have a hot dinner?" I asked. She had to think. "A few weeks ago. Dad brought home pizza on a Friday and Nicole let me eat with everyone because it was pizza night and she said it was easier." Easier. That word had been doing a lot of work in that house. "That's not happening anymore," I said. "You eat real meals at a real table every day." She nodded and drank her juice and looked around my kitchen like she was memorizing it. After she was in bed, I sat at the kitchen table with a yellow legal pad and wrote down everything. Dates, as specifically as I could reconstruct them. The room she'd been living in, the eating arrangements, the things she'd told me, the things I'd observed. I wrote it all down in the careful, thorough way that 38 years of documentation will teach you, because I'd learned a long time ago that the truth without a record is just a feeling, and feelings don't protect children. Then I called my son. He picked up immediately. He'd been waiting. She's safe. She's fed. She's in bed. I let that land. Tomorrow, 10 o'clock. Come alone. Nicole should be part of this conversation. Not tomorrow. Tomorrow is between you and me and your daughter. Come alone, or don't come. Silence. Then, okay. I barely slept. I kept thinking about the room. The bare bulb, the high narrow window, the cereal bowl on the floor. The way Lily had said, "I try not to bother anyone," as if not bothering anyone, was the best she was allowed to hope for. I was up at 5:30, made coffee, called the school to let them know Lily would be absent. Then I sat down and wrote the most important thing on my list. I called Child Protective Services. I didn't wait to see how things shook out with Connor. I didn't wait to give Nicole a chance to explain or for Connor to decide what he believed. I had been a principal for 38 years. I had made hundreds of those calls. I had learned, over and over, that waiting and hoping and giving benefit of the doubt costs children months of their lives that they don't get back. I picked up the phone and I reported what I had seen and what my granddaughter had told me, and I gave them the address, and I gave them my own information as a former mandatory reporter, and I made sure there was a paper trail before the sun came up. Lily slept until 8:30, which I suspected meant she hadn't been sleeping well before this. When she came out, I had eggs and toast and orange juice on the table, and she sat down without being asked, like she'd remembered that eating at a table was something she was allowed to do. We talked about her school, her friends, a book she was reading, normal things. She told me she'd quit the school art club in September because the meetings ran late and she didn't want to make the carpool complicated. I wrote that down on my legal pad after she went to get dressed. Connor arrived at 10:02, alone, looking like he hadn't slept either. I brought him into the kitchen. Lily was in her room, which she'd asked to be, and I'd told her she didn't have to come out until she was ready. I put the legal pad on the table between us. "I want you to read what's on that paper," I said. He read it. It took a few minutes. When he put it down, his face was gray. "I didn't know it was all of that," he said. "Yes, you did." I kept my voice level. "Not the details, maybe. But you knew. You knew something was wrong with how she was being treated. You knew she wasn't eating with the family. You knew her room was that room. You chose to accept Nicole's framing because accepting the alternative would have required you to act. That's not fair. I'm not interested in fair right now. I'm interested in your daughter." He rubbed his face. "Nicole is. She's not a bad person. She's trying to manage a complicated household, and Lily is. Lily has a lot of grief, and it comes out sideways sometimes. And Nicole's kids aren't used to. Connor. I stopped him. I need you to hear yourself. You are explaining to me why your daughter deserves to be isolated. You are giving me reasons why it makes sense that your 12-year-old child, whose mother is dead, should eat alone in a storage room every night so Nicole's kids aren't made uncomfortable. He closed his eyes. Lily asked me last night if she makes people uncomfortable, I said. She asked me if that's why nobody wants to eat with her. That question came from somewhere. It didn't come from thin air. It came from 5 months of being treated like an inconvenience in her own home. I know. His voice was barely above a whisper. I've already called CPS. His eyes opened. Dad, I made the call this morning. It was the right thing to do, and you know it. They're going to investigate. They're going to interview Lily and probably Nicole's kids and probably you. And Connor, I need you to be honest with them. Not protective of Nicole. Not trying to manage the narrative. Honest. About everything. He was quiet for a long time. I waited. I told myself she was adjusting, he said finally. I told myself Lily needed time and space, and that Nicole was actually helping her by not forcing her into situations that stressed her out. Nicole's very convincing. She has an explanation for everything. And I was tired, and I was on the road 4 days a week, and it was easier to believe her than to come home and deal with conflict. I know. I failed her. I didn't contradict him because he was right, and saying he hadn't would have been a kindness he didn't deserve and wouldn't have helped either of them. You can stop failing her, starting today. That's the only option you have. He asked to see Lily. I told him that was her choice. I went to her room and knocked and told her her father was here, and asked what she wanted to do. She thought about it for almost a full minute. Okay, she said, but I want you to stay. The three of us sat in my living room, Connor on the couch, Lily in the armchair she'd always claimed as a kid, me in the chair by the window. For the first few minutes, nobody said anything. Then Connor said, I'm sorry, Lily. I know that doesn't fix anything. Lily looked at him the way only a child who has been quietly watching adults fail them can look at someone. Clear, assessing, not cold, but careful. Why did you believe her? She asked. When she said I preferred eating alone, did you actually think that was true? That I wanted to eat by myself every night? Connor looked at his hands. No. So you knew she was lying. I knew it wasn't the whole truth. I told myself it was complicated. It wasn't complicated, Dad. She didn't want me at the table. She wanted me out of the way. And you let her. The silence after that was the kind that changes things. I saw it change Connor. I watched him sit in it instead of trying to escape it. And I thought that maybe, if he could sit in it long enough, there was a chance for him. I know, he said. I'm not angry, Lily said. And she said it like she was discovering this as she spoke. I was. A lot. But mostly I was just. I couldn't understand why. I kept thinking I was doing something wrong. That if I was quieter or cleaner or less sad about Mom, then maybe things would be different. No, Connor's voice broke. No, that's not. Lily, that's never been about you. I know that now, Grandpa told me. She looked at me briefly. But you could have told me too, instead of just letting me think it. There was nothing for Connor to say to that. To his credit, he didn't try to fill the silence. The CPS investigation took 7 weeks. I cooperated completely. I gave them my written account, answered every question, made myself available. I encouraged Lily to be honest with the investigator, and she was, in that careful, precise way she had, recounting dates and incidents with a clarity that I suspected had come from 5 months of lying in that small room, turning things over in her mind. The investigator also spoke with Lily's former teacher, who confirmed that she had noticed a change in Lily's affect, starting in the fall, that she'd seemed withdrawn and had lost weight. She spoke with the pediatrician, who confirmed that Lily had missed her last 2 wellness appointments, and that her weight at the most recent visit before those had been in the low normal range. She spoke with Emma, Nicole's 10-year-old, who had her mother's instinct for managing impressions, and initially said everything was fine. But when the investigator interviewed her a second time, separately, away from the house, Emma said something that appeared in the final report in stark official language, that her mother had told her and Jake not to invite Lily to sit with them when they watched television because Lily was going through something and needed space, and that this had been the rule since the summer. She spoke with Jake, who was 14 and uncomfortable and trying to protect his mother, but who admitted, when pressed, that he'd felt bad about the dinner arrangement and had said so once to Nicole, and Nicole had told him that Lily's therapist had recommended it. When the investigator noted that Lily had no current therapist, Jake went quiet. Connor, by that point, had retained a divorce attorney. He was renting a 2-bedroom apartment in Millbrook, one of the bedrooms for Lily. He had started attending therapy himself, which I hadn't asked him to do, but which told me something about where he was. He told the CPS investigator everything, fully and without excuses. And whatever that cost him, I believe he understood it was a debt he owed. The final report was substantiated neglect, emotional neglect by step-parent, secondary neglect by biological father, failure to protect. The recommendation was that Lily remain in my care pending resolution of the custody arrangement. Nicole at this point had a lawyer who was very busy painting a picture of a misunderstood stepmother doing her best with a difficult family situation. The lawyer used words like overwhelmed and unsupported and noted that Nicole had 2 children of her own and limited help from a frequently absent husband. It was, I thought, a portrait of a woman who had been wronged, painted by someone being paid to paint that portrait. The judge who read the CPS report had different paintbrushes. At one point in the proceedings, Nicole's lawyer argued that the sleeping and eating arrangements had been, at worst, a parenting miscalculation made under stress, and that the characterization of them as neglect was excessive. The judge asked one question: whose idea was it to put Lily in the utility room? Nicole said it had been a mutual decision. Connor said, on the stand, under oath, that Nicole had proposed it, and he had agreed without adequately considering what he was agreeing to. Nicole's lawyer tried to rehabilitate this. The judge moved on. The divorce was finalized 5 months after I walked into that house on a Tuesday night because my gas tank was low. Connor and Nicole split the assets. Nicole got the house, which had mostly been purchased with her family's money. Connor got his retirement accounts and his pension. There was no alimony after what the judge's written ruling called a sustained pattern of emotional harm toward a minor child, which the court found credible and documented. Nicole lost something else, too. The CPS findings had become part of the public record, and Emma and Jake's father, Nicole's ex-husband, who had been watching the proceedings carefully from his home in Cleveland, filed for a modification of the custody arrangement. He'd been paying child support and accepting his every other weekend schedule without complaint for 4 years. But when he read about the environment Nicole had created, the isolation, the rules about not including Lily, the way a child had been quietly pushed to the margins of a family, he said he wasn't comfortable leaving his daughters in that environment. The family court agreed. Emma and Jake's custody was modified to primary residence with their father. Nicole retained parental rights and scheduled visitation, but she went from a household of 4 to a house by herself, and it happened in less than 6 months. I won't say I felt nothing about that. I'm not that detached. But what I felt wasn't satisfaction exactly. More like the quiet settling of something that had been tilted wrong for too long, finally finding its level. Lily stayed with me through the winter and into the spring. Permanent guardianship was formally established in February, with the understanding that as Connor demonstrated stability and commitment, we would revisit the arrangement. That suited all of us, including Lily, who had very clear opinions about the timeline and communicated them with a directness that occasionally made the attorneys blink. She went back to school in Cincinnati, which meant a new school mid-year, which was hard. She is not the kind of child who finds new schools easy. She's quiet in the way her mother was quiet, which looks like shyness but is actually a very careful attentiveness, and it takes her time to decide who is worth trusting. It took about 6 weeks. Then she found 2 girls in her art class who also liked watercolors and old movies, and after that she seemed to expand somehow, like a window that had been painted shut for too long, finally being worked open. She ate at my kitchen table every single morning and evening. She helped me cook on weekends. She critiqued my omelets, which needed critiquing. She took over Ruth's herb garden in the spring with a ferocity that delighted me, telling me I'd been watering the basil wrong for years, which was almost certainly true. She laughed more. Not all the time. Not in the uncomplicated way she had before her mother died. But real laughter. the kind that surprises the person making it. Connor visited every week without exception. In the beginning, Lily was polite and distant, which was worse than angry, I think, because it was so clearly an effort to manage her own feelings rather than express them. He accepted it. He didn't push for warmth she wasn't ready to give. He came on Sundays and helped with yard work and ate dinner at my table and asked Lily about her week and listened to her answers without trying to fix anything or make it mean more than it meant. It took 4 months before she called him Dad without the slight pause that had been coming before it. He cried in my kitchen after she'd gone to bed, the night that happened. Not dramatically, just quietly, into a cup of coffee, like a man understanding the cost of what he'd been given back. "I almost didn't have this," he said. "I know. If you hadn't stopped for gas." "I know." He looked up. "How do I make sure I don't do it again? Lose sight of her. Let someone else define what she needs." I thought about it for a moment. You stay in therapy. You don't let anyone, ever, tell you who your daughter is. And when something feels wrong, you don't decide it's complicated. You decide it's worth looking at directly. He nodded slowly. "She needs you to see her," I said. "She's always needed that. It's the same thing she needed from you when she was 8, and it's the same thing she'll need when she's 28. Just to be seen by her father." Lily turned 13 in November, a year after I'd first found her in that room. We had a party at my house, the real kind, loud and full of people. Connor was there. 3 girls from her new school were there. Her mother's sister drove up from Lexington with her 2 kids, because I'd called her in the spring and told her everything, and she'd been driving up roughly once a month ever since. There was a cake with uneven frosting that Lily had made herself and was extremely proud of. At one point, I looked across the room and saw her sitting on the floor with her aunt and her friends, all of them laughing about something on one of the girls' phones, and I thought about the narrow window and the bare bulb and the cereal bowl on the floor, and I had to go stand in the kitchen for a minute. Connor found me there. "You okay?" he asked. "Just needed a moment." He stood beside me and we both looked out at the living room. Lily was telling some story with her hands, animating something, and all 3 of her friends were laughing. "She looks like her mom when she does that," Connor said. "She always did." He was quiet for a while, then he said, "Thank you for stopping." I knew what he meant. Not just that night. Not just the gas station. The whole long chain of stopping. Stopping to look. Stopping to ask. Stopping to act. Stopping to stay. "She's worth stopping for," I said. He nodded. We went back to the party. Later that night, after everyone had gone and Lily had gone to bed, I sat on the back porch with a cup of decaf and listened to the November quiet. Down the street, somebody's leaf pile was still smoldering with that particular autumn smell that always makes me think of football games and Ruth in her green coat and the specific feeling of things being where they belong. I thought about what would have happened if I'd made it to the highway before my gaslight came on, if I'd have had just a few more miles in the tank. I have turned this over many times in the past year, the arithmetic of it, the accident of it. The idea that my granddaughter's life, the course of it, the direction of it, might have bent permanently in a different direction on the outcome of a fuel gauge. But then I think about what Lily told me once, a few months into living here, when she was talking about her mother. She said her mother used to say that the moments that matter always feel accidental from the inside, that nobody plans the conversations that change things, that you just have to stay awake enough to have them when they arrive. Lily's mother was a smart woman. Her daughter is too. I finished my coffee and went inside. From her room at the end of the hall, I could hear the small sounds of my granddaughter awake, probably reading, probably with the lamp on late. I didn't knock. She was okay. She knew where I was. And in this house, unlike the last one, the light at the end of the hall meant someone was nearby, not far away. That was enough. That was everything.